In just a few hours, the CBS Board of Directors will meet to consider the fate of their CEO, Les Moonves, after allegations of sexual misconduct by at least 6 women. The women spoke to Ronan Farrow. In a piece for The New Yorker, Moonves issued his own statement, saying, in part, throughout my time at CBS, we have promoted a culture of respect and opportunity for all employees and have consistently found success elevating women to top executive positions across the country. I recognize that there were times decades ago when I may have made some women uncomfortable by making advances. Those were mistakes, and I regret them immensely. But I always understood and respected and abided by the principle that no means no. And I have never misused my position to harm or hinder anyone's career. Investigative journalist Ronan Farrow joins us now. Good morning, Ronan.
Good morning.
So what are these women alleging that Les Moonves did?
You know, these are very serious allegations, Allison, and 2 of these women term what they went through assault, and I think have a fair case that it would be within the conventional definitions of assault. You know, we were talking about encounters in which women allege they were pinned down and struggled to escape. It's serious stuff, but I also want to point out that in some of these cases, more than the initial incident, these are women who said what was scarring was the threats of retaliation, that there appeared to be a pattern of saying, you know, this is going to harm your career. And I think that's worth all of us looking at in a corporate context.
And not only the threats of this is going to harm your career, I mean, these women allege that it did harm their career.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because in some of these cases, it's not a gray area. Look, Ileana Douglas, whose allegation in part Leslie Moonves has confirmed, was fired after this from her deal with CBS and obtained a settlement. And, you know, we looked at the documentation for that. That absolutely happened and is not disputed. CBS disputes why she was fired and why the settlement happened. But what her lawyer and a lot of people who were involved in the process at the time recall is that this happened right after what she at the time was calling a sexual assault, and that they all knew about that.
And on that same point, Ileana Douglas is an interesting case to look into, because when Les Moonves in his statement says, I always respected the principle of no means no, not what she's alleging. I mean, she's alleging that she was pinned and that she said no and that he blocked her exit from the door.
Not in a number of these cases. That's right.
So his statement, I thought it was interesting that his statement went as far as it did, that his statement got as specific as it did. I thought it was interesting. You know, often these guys just give a blanket denial when they're accused. But I thought it was interesting that he said decades ago, I may have done some of these things, because then in that case, the public can say, well, obviously the rules have changed ever since Me Too. Maybe this was old, bad behavior. But when he gets as specific as no means no, that's not what your reporting found.
That isn't these women's recollection, and I would also point out that our reporting is not that this was decades ago. You know, the most recent of these cases was in the 2000s. You know, I'll let his statements speak for themselves, but the article, I think, also speaks for itself.
One of the more recent episodes that you unearthed is from 2006, and I believe at that time he was already married to Julie Chen. And Julie Chen, as you know, is a well-known TV host. In fact, she's going to be on TV today on her show. It's called The Talk. And she has unequivocally come out and supported her husband and stood by him. It would be interesting to watch what happens today. Do you have anything in terms of why? Do you find it unusual that a wife who's in the public would make such a public statement?
You know, it's not really for me to weigh in on Julie Chen's statements. Obviously, I feel for any family member going through the repercussions of allegations like this. And I think in the minds of the sources in this story, the goal here was not to take down Leslie Moonves. The goal here is to air stories that were buried, sometimes for a long time, because these women were terrified, and to protect the next woman who comes along, both with respect to Les Moonves and with respect to a culture around women and a culture of retaliation that a lot of people, dozens of people, said extended across various parts of this company. So I think what these sources want is accountability. You know, that this is not about tearing down an individual, and of course that's painful for a family and for someone like Julie Chen.
That's such a great point. So let's talk about that culture. So after Charlie Rose was so publicly called out and fired, what happened at CBS after that? Was there a reckoning?
What these sources say is no. We are talking to people who say they were retaliated against very recently at that company, and that individuals who knew about Charlie Rose, and that includes Jeff Fager. Many of the sources in this story say that he was aware of that abuse. He's obviously the executive producer of 60 Minutes, and for a time reported to Moonves as the head of the news division there. People also said that there were allegations against him. We talk about 6 employees who describe inappropriate touching for him. So the pattern, Allison, that is described in this story, and we're careful not to overgeneralize, this is certain facets of this company. Obviously, it is a very large corporation, but the pattern is that you have allegations at the top, and then allegations a layer down, and then allegations a layer down from that. And in each of these cases, we have people saying, we spoke up and we were retaliated against. There was not accountability. They didn't do anything.
So now you've gotten the board of directors' attention, and they will be doing an investigation, they say, and they will be having a meeting about all of this. But, on the flip side, Les Moonves is incredibly important. He's vital, or he's seen as being vital to this company, just as Matt Lauer was seen as being vital to the company, and Charlie Rose was seen as being vital to the company, and Harvey Weinstein was seen as being vital to his company. So what do you think the board will do?
Well, you talked about those points of comparison. Certainly, in terms of how vital someone is to a company, Leslie Moonves is vital in a way none of those other names were. And I think one of the things that made these women so afraid to speak out. I mean, this took months and months of complicated conversation. These were not people knocking on my door. Even Ileana Douglas, who did reach out after the Weinstein story, didn't reach out saying, I'm ready to go on the record. They were all scared. And I think that comes from the fact that this is someone who is at the heart of the financial fortunes of a company that is a really important institution. And it'll be an interesting test of resolve and of whether a company and a board is willing to live up to the kinds of statements we've seen since the popularization of the Me Too movement. Because this is more than cosmetic. I think accountability here will mean potentially taking a hit in terms of the bottom line.
Ronan Farrow, thank you for your excellent reporting and always sharing it with us on New Day. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Allison. Good to be here.